Well, thank you all for coming out to listen to me. I don't know, though, why you would do that. Haven't you had enough of us news anchors already? Well, the good part is that today it's just me here alone, without those 15 faces in small little boxes yelling out their guts, and me successfully outshouting them all. It's really easy, actually. You see, I have a guy in the production room who controls the audio, the mic volumes, and he ensures that I get to be the loudest of all without even having to strain my voice. Effortless. Contrary to what you may believe, my primary job description is not that. So, why am I here? What is this about? In the world of noisy TV debates and news bulletins that are filled with theatrics, I also have a show. Now, if you've been paying attention to what I've just said in the first 60 seconds, then no points for guessing who gets to have the last word on my show. Guilty as charged. But let's get back to the point. What is our primary job description? It's definitely not what I spoke about. Believe it or not, we spend hours debating and researching before we actually finalize on the topic for the day. So every morning at about 9 a.m., the editors get on a conference call. And by editors, I don't mean editors of different news channels, the talking heads getting together on a conference. Sounds like a possibility, right? Especially if you look at what really goes on at 9 p.m. on news channels. But I assure you, that doesn't happen. So getting back to the 9 a.m. conference calls, which is actually the seniors of the firm where I work. And from there, we constantly debate and discuss. We keep throwing fresh information, ideas, numbers at each other, sometimes even up to an hour before the show. Simultaneously, keep it in mind, we are also responding to a whole array of news developments from across the world. So from terror attacks to natural calamities, from parliament uproar to cybercrime, to collapsing urban infrastructure, to crime against women, to crucial court verdicts, and so much more that happens every single day. And so we go on, discussing, debating, until I believe and I'm convinced that we have found the right topic for the day to which I will be able to do justice. Now, the fact of the matter is, if you all believe that the TV debate format is slightly misplaced, I have some bad news for you. Indians love to argue. More importantly, Indians love to watch other people fight. Tark Vitark has been part of our culture for time immemorial now. From Mahabharata to the Constituent Assembly debates that literally shaped our constitution 50 years ago, and even to the debates that we had in our schools, the for and against debate format is literally a part of our culture, which is why I believe the TV news is here to stay, and people are watching it. Despite the fact, and much to my dislike, that there has been an explosion in digital news content or digital content. And I say much to my dislike because I'm still a broadcast journalist. But despite that explosion of information, what has happened is, of course, information and access to that is not difficult. So if I don't tell you something today, it doesn't mean that you're not going to find out about it. Information is at your fingertips. But explaining the nuances and explaining the impact of every single incident, every comment, every policy action, or the lack of it, that is what the viewer wants. Sure, after watching it, they may pop a pill for headache and go to sleep. But that is what they want. Now, since a bunch of you here are engineers or trying to be engineers, I'm going to try and give you an analogy to explain to you this point further. Indian media and TV news is like a transistor that takes low currents, strengthens it multiple times, and throws the output. It amplifies the impact of the news development. So there are three elements. There's the input, which is the source. There is a transistor, the gate that amplifies the current, and then there is the output. In earlier days, the source was the government. Your transistor was Doordarshan, and the TV sets in your homes, which is where you were getting your output. But in today's day and age, there are logic gates. The many news channels, private news channels that we have, those are logic gates that are picking up information from multiple input switches, amplifying them, and throwing the output out. You would expect it to be a variable output. That's how it's designed. So we've spoken about the need and the relevance of TV news. But the big question is, are we doing it right? Simply put, can I give you a variety of output if my input is restricted to just two perspectives? On our news channels today, there are many, many voices that come on board, but there are actually only two viewpoints: agree or disagree with the government, agree or disagree with the ideology, or sometimes agree or disagree with the anchor of the show. But that's about it. This has become a binary approach. If there is any other view out there, I assure you, you haven't heard it. Or if they did manage to speak up, in all of that commotion, you were not able to understand that view. So we started our show, and the idea was to reduce this noise and to increase the clarity of the argument. So we decided, instead of calling 10 people, we're going to call just 2 people. One who represents the authority, answering the questions, and the other who's making those questions, who's questioning the authority. But as we went along, we realized that we had missed on a very important aspect of life. To any story, there are never just 2 sides, especially not in an incredibly complicated country like ours. There are nuances. Even if it is just about making your authority accountable, even if you keep the politics out of it and just talk about the policy or the lack of it, each action can have different impact on different kind of people. Then how could we ignore all of those voices every day, constantly? Maybe, like some of our governments have done, and some of our peers do. We couldn't. But this binary approach in media has gradually manifested itself into even selecting the topics. I'll give you an example. Late last year, there was this huge protest against a movie. There was a set of people who believed that their religious sentiments would be hurt by this movie. There was another set of people who spoke about freedom of expression. It was a clear standoff. Religion and Bollywood, 2 bestsellers in India, put them together, get some popcorn and sink in your couch and watch that show. But at the same time, there was an escalation in the protests by the farmers of our country. Months and months of dharna, hunger strike, mass suicides across the country had failed to get them the attention of the government. And so 3 lakh of these farmers at that time decided that they are going to march to the parliament. Now, this is not a binary debate. There are nuances to this. For example, just one of the problems for our farmers today in this country is the low prices that they get for their food and vegetables. Good for you, the consumer, these low prices, not so much for the farmer. It's a nuanced debate. And it is screaming for prime time attention. So we decided to give space and attention to both, to the Kisan and the farmer in pain in our country, and to freedom of expression. Amidst the din over who should sing the national song and how should it be sung, amidst the face-off that you see about use of loudspeakers for religious purposes, amidst the entire debate and rhetoric about love jihad, which is essentially just 2 people from different religion falling in love, the challenge is for us to not forget that it is also the priority to talk about more pressing issues like the job crisis in our country, like the collapsing urban infrastructure in our country, like the farm crisis, like the abysmal state of health and the abysmal state of education. I'm going to try and give you another example of why it is highly essential to speak about the right issues. About 30,000 people were forced to move, to relocate to a place called Mahul in Mumbai, which is what we call literally a toxic hell, full of poisonous gases, with at least a dozen factories churning out smoke every day. These people very quickly started to develop diseases. There are deaths being reported in many of these families, and we've documented this for days together. It is the kind of thing that in a consensus society, you would see outrage and rebellion out there on the streets. But there's absolute silence while the government and the civic body engages in a blame game. And those people are slowly dying. And if you haven't been following us, then you would probably not even know that there was a place called Mahul that existed in our country. And this is what was happening there. For many in TV news today, the goal is to keep the viewer engaged for as long as they can and as intently as they can. And so there is chaos, there is commotion, there is confusion, there is pandering to existing prejudices. This is the mold, and all stories are being put in this mold. And to me, that is also one kind of fake news. Fake news. A lot is being said about it these days. Indians will not hesitate to kill if they suspect somebody to be a child trafficker. 24 Indians have been killed in incidences of mob violence just this year, based on rumors on WhatsApp messages about child trafficking and child kidnapping, or child lifting as it's called. Think about it. 24 people have been killed because we didn't think twice before forwarding that WhatsApp message. Now let's look at the facts of this case. Is child trafficking new to our country in 2018? Did we just suddenly discover this phenomenon? We never heard people taking law in their own hands to protect the children just on mere suspicion. So why is it happening now? I believe that an entire generation of people, if not more, are feeling let down and betrayed by the system. They feel wronged by the system. And they feel the system, which is the lawmakers, the law enforcers, even the media, haven't done right by them, and it is now up to them to do that. And it is this discontent that fake news actually feeds on. The news may be false, but the people who are peddling it are real. It could be your parents, it could be your uncles, your aunts, your relatives on some family WhatsApp group, it could be your old classmates, it could be your friends, unaware of their own bigotry. But why are people believing these forwards? That's the question. Maybe, A, they don't know any better. Like musician Bano said, the less you know, the more you believe. Or maybe B, people haven't seen much credible action from our institutions. Think about it. How many of you actually trust the police department of your area? How many of you actually have trust in the elected representative that you've elected? How many of you have any trust in the media that we have today? But fake news is not just false information. It could be incomplete information. Some facts withheld, some facts not verified. It could be information that has been taken out of context. It could even be demagoguery. An idea that feeds on your emotions, on your fear, on your existing prejudices, and not plays to your rational side. And to me, this misdirecting of the viewer, of the citizen, is as evil as false information. There is a problem with credibility in Indian media today. But I think that's also an opportunity for a journalist, for a youngish journalist like me, to do the right thing. It's not as if the news is actually responsible for the quality of the journalism that's going on. If there ever has been a time to be the best at what I do, it is now. If you come to me for your news of the day, it is a massive responsibility that I have to tell you all that is happening in your world. And if you come to me and I tell you that the big story of the day is that you hate a political party over the other, and not tell you that the civic body of your city is giving contracts to blacklisted vendors, which is probably why you have potholes in your city, if I tell you the first and not the second, if I tell you that A political party is more communal than B and B is more classist than C, and not tell you that A plus B plus C together quietly joined hands to pass a legislation in the parliament that makes it next to impossible for us to punish corrupt officials. If I tell you the first and not the second, that I am breaking your trust. And I fight every day not to do that. I don't believe that the conventional definition of journalism, that you should just report the facts and walk away, works anymore in 2018. Sure, I will give you all the facts. Sure, I will tell you all aspects of the story. But sometimes, I will also initiate that one thought process. Sometimes, I will spark that one conversation that could perhaps one day lead to a bigger change. Sometimes, I will simply be the platform for all of those voices that have gone unheard for so many years. That battle has just begun, and it's a long way to go. I'm completely out of time, but I just want to say this one last thing. In fact, I'm just going to quote Charles Dickens from The Great Expectation. He wrote, "Take nothing on its looks. Take everything by the evidence." That's the basic rule. The battle against fake news, all kinds that I just described, is as much yours as it is mine. Thank you.